Namaskar, and thanks to Pleach India Foundation for inviting me for this prestigious webinar and session on regional school of miniature painting. And I shall invite now Prachi Petwal to present her paper.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
My paper examines the Garhwal school within the broader category of Pahari painting and questions the assumptions that Pahari painting presents a unified stylistic traditions. Through a comparative analysis with Kangra and Vasholi schools, I argue that Garhwal constitutes a distinct aesthetic system that is shaped by the regional conditions. Pahari paintings have historically been broadly categorized to describe miniature traditions from the Himalayan regions. However, this classification often assumes stylistic unity. As my paper shows, this masks important regional differences, particularly in schools like Garhwal, which remain unrepresented in art historical discourse. The central question guiding this study is whether Garhwal school represent a distinct regional traditions or whether it can be adequately understood as a variation within the broader Pahari style. I argue that treating it as a variation obscure its unique visual logic. My research question focuses on the canonical dismissal. In the 19th century, Indian paintings were dismissed through Eurocentric frameworks. The revival led by Anand Kumaraswamy repositioned these traditions within art history. However, this revival also introduced broader stylistic categories like Pahari, which led to hierarchies wherein the Kangra became dominant, while other schools like Garhwal were marginalized. The paper combines a close visual analysis with comparative study, examining line, color, composition, and spatial structure across selected works from Garhwal, Kangra, and Basholi. This allows me to identify distinct artistic principles rather than treating them as stylistic variations. The Garhwal art school, which started in the 17th century, through Mughal influence, showcases a great level of Mughal influence in the initial phase. Wherein in the 18th century, there is an integration with the Kangra school, wherein we see artists like Molaram highly influenced by the school of Kangra. And then the incredible Himalayan landscape. The Garhwal school, especially through artists such as Molaram, developed a distinct visual language. It is characterized through fluid line work, softer tonalities, and stronger integration of figures within the landscape. Schools such as Basholi showcase bolder painting emphasis and stylization. Figures are sharp, defined, and colors are intense. Emotions are externalized and dramatic, wherein immediate reaction could be seen. This is fundamentally different from Garhwal's atmospheric and internal approach. Similarly, schools like Kangra represent a refinement and lyricism in their work. Landscapes are lush and detailed, and figures are idealized. However, unlike Garhwal, Kangra maintains a clear distinction between the figure and the environment. I would further take into explaining the paintings, visual analysis of some of the paintings. Wherein Garhwal, the line, the tone, and the atmosphere is very important. There is a controlled line work, flexible and fluid, lacking sharp controls and strict clarity. The tone is restrained. There is a lot of gradation in the tone of colors, and mood and introspection are of high importance. The atmosphere is airy and non-hierarchical, wherein figures emerge from landscape. For example, there are two examples by artist Mola Ram, who is seen as one of the finest artists to emerge from the Garhwal school, and it is his time that is seen as the zenith of Garhwal. Herein, we can see a work wherein Kalia Daman is showcased. The composition is structured, and movement and turbulence can be seen rather than stability. The swirling grey water, the pictorial field, creating a rhythmic and spiral like energy that pulls the viewer inward. Krishna's body is dynamic, position stretching across the serpent's form, which itself becomes both the subject and the compositional axis. Unlike Basholi, where drama is conveyed through bold color and rigid contours, here drama emerges from the fluid motions and spiritual distortion. The lines are not sharp but elastic, allowing the serpent and the water to emerge visually. The female figures at the bottom are arranged in a curved and echoing gestures, reinforcing circular motion of water. Emotions are not exaggerated and facially both distributed through posture and flow. Similarly, we can see one of the best works of Molaram. Here, the painting of Krishna holding the Govardhan Parvat is shown. Unlike the highly romanticized landscape of the Kangra school, the scene contains a more communal and contained showcase wherein figures are in close proximity and arranged in gestures of offering reverence and interaction. The presence of cows and a calf in the foreground reinforces pastoral context, while the canopy and ornamental birds above showcase a courtly dimension. Stylistically, the painting is marked by controlled yet soft line work and balanced, somewhat muted color tones. There is a lot of tonal gradation we can see in the painting. And this distinguishes it from the bold chromatic intensity of Basholi and the refined naturalism of Kangra. The integration of figures and setting produces a sense of rationality rather than hierarchy, suggesting an emphasis on lived devotional experience rather than purely iconic representation. Here, atmosphere, narrative integration, and emotional nuance takes precedence, thereby reinforcing the argument from recognizing regional specificity within the broader context of the Pahari paintings. There are a few more examples where we can see great influence from other Pahari school as well as Mughal schools of miniature painting within the Garhwal school. However, Garhwal further maintains a new identity wherein atmosphere is an active landscape is very important. Here I have taken an example of the Congress school wherein the landscape becomes a background wherein the protagonist is set in the center. So it's like a stage. However, in Garhwal school, the protagonist becomes the participants and merges within the landscape. It's much more integrated within the landscape and constructed around it. The final comparison shows that the schools are not stylistic variations but distinct visual systems. Garhwal integrates, Kangra idealizes, and Basholi stylizes.
Prachi, you get another 5 minutes to sum up your paper.
Sure, sir. The process of revival and classification shaped how these traditions are understood today. Kangra became the model of Pahari painting, while Garhwal was treated as a periphery. This reflects not historical reality, but art historical construction, which we can see in further museums and institutionalizations of art also. I would like to conclude now. To conclude, the Garhwal painting demonstrate that regional specificity is central, not secondary. The category of Pahari painting obscure these differences, recognizing Garhwal as a distinct aesthetic formation, allowing us to rethink Indian art history as a plural and regional grounded field. Thank you so much. These are my references. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Prachi Petwal, for your detailed presentation on Garhwal, Basoli, and Kangra School. And you have mentioned one artist, Molaram. It's very fantastic works. And thank you. Great.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Next presenter, Abdur Rahman.
Good morning, all of you. Thank you very much, Please India, to giving this wonderful opportunity to present my paper. My topic is From Imperial Courts to Regional Aesthetics, Artistic Migration and the Transformation of Mughal Painting in Awadh. So basically, this article is based on just after the decline of Mughal paintings, and it has been shifted in Awadh region, how the artists have influenced from various regional intactness and European influence, but they have performed miniature style. So visual art and creative expression constitute a vital dimension of human culture, as we know, elevating humankind to the gamut of aesthetic experience. Painting traditions in India, particularly those associated with us ancient heritage, may be broadly categorized into two categories, mural and miniature forms. But later, being executed on a small scale of perishable materials such as paper and cloth, often for manuscript or in the form of muraqqa or album as the medium of expression. This article explores the evolution of miniature painting tradition in post-Mughals in Awadh region situated in North India. The miniature tradition of regional schools emerged as a significant aspect of sustained India's cultural heritage, functioning as visual documents of the past and underscoring the enduring importance of art and cultural life of the country. Artists from different provincial backgrounds travel to Delhi to acquire fundamental principles of Imperial Mughal style. After receiving the specific training, they return to their respective regions, whether disseminated and adapted the specific training. They return to their respective regions where they disseminated and adapted these artistic conventions within local context. This process led to the emergence of what turned into provincial Mughal painting, a dynamic synthesis resulting from the interaction between the refined Mughal idiom and indigenous artistic traditions. Prominent centers of this regional development included Lucknow, Faizabad, now Ayodhya, Murshidabad, and Hyderabad. After the turndown of the Mughal Empire in the 18th century, switched a major reallocation of artistic skills across the Indian subcontinent as well as in the Awadh region or United Province. Before its reorganization as a separate state, Uttar Pradesh was known as United Province of Agra and Awadh, today comprising 75 districts. It stands as one of the foremost cultural nuclei of India. The state encompasses world-renowned cities such as Lucknow, celebrated for its Nawabi heritage and refined aesthetic traditions. Varanasi, now Banaras, received the eternal city and a cradle spiritual and artistic pursuits. Agra, immortalized by the Taj Mahal and a center of Mughal art. Prayagraj, noted for its historical, literary, and intellectual vibrancy, and Mathura, birthplace of Krishna and the living repository of devotional art. Each of these cultural centers contributes a unique dimension to the grand narrative of India's transcendental cultural evolution. The study variously examines how the migration of Mughal trained artists to Awadh, particularly Lucknow and Faizabad, accelerated the transfiguration of courtly miniature traditions into regional idioms. With the rise of Nawabs as influential artistic and cultural patrons, Awadh became a strong artistic center for where amalgamation of Mughal, Persian, regional folk, and European visual elements assembled together, and also the study suggests these distinguished corpus has encouraged sustained inquiry, particularly between court artists and patrons in Awadh. Painting should not be analyzed as a decline of the art of Mughal miniature, but as a process of aesthetic reconfiguration shaped by artistic shift and changing range of individual taste. The Mughals, more or less, from Akbar to Aurangzeb, expanded all sort of artistic and cultural preservations, touched man's creative pursuits, and the empire is known as the artistic splendor of its unique contribution in miniature painting. The 18th century witnessed the gradual disintegration of Mughal authority due to internal conflicts, economic instability, and external invasions. As the imperial patronage declined, meanwhile, artists sought new opportunities in provincial courts. Awadh, particularly under Nawabs such as Saadat Ali Khan and Asif-ud-Dawla, emerged as a major cultural hub. Here, an effort to concluding the artistic journey of region would be better through not all but active epicenters such as Faizabad, Agra, Fatehpur Sikri, Banaras, Allahabad, and Lucknow. The Nawabs of Awadh favored themes of leisure, romance, and courtly elegance. Patronage shifted from state-centered narratives to more personal and intimate subjects. The silent features of Awadhi patronage can be observed as the emphasis on courtly pleasures, including music, dance, and mehfil scenes. Their representation of elite lifestyle and aristocratic refinement, the inclusion of women in more prominent expressive roles in and interest in architectural settings, specifically palaces and gardens. This change reflects a broader cultural transition from power display to aesthetic indulgence. In Lucknow and Faizabad, the Awadhi school of painting emerged with the blending of Mughal refinement, Rajput romanticism, and Pahari grace. Meanwhile, the name of Awadh is also notable among the provincial art schools. The provincial center Awadh became the center of activities of number of artists of Mughal brushworks. In the Awadh art school, not only produced the art of portraiture, but also flourished the subject of religious harmony. The migration of Mughal artists to Awadh did not result in a mere continuation of established styles. Rather, it led to the creative synthesis. While maintaining technical precision, fine brushworks, delicate shading, and controlled composition, artists began to experiment with new visual elements. However, the key stylistic feature of Awadh miniature can be observed as the softened color palette compared to the rich and intense Mughal tones. One of the most striking transformation in Awadh painting is the shift in subject matter. Awadh miniature explores romantic encounters and love, zanana scenes and feminine spaces, festivals, music and dance performance and leisure activities of the nobility. The narrative move away from public display of authority to private moments of pleasure and emotion. Reflecting the cultural ethos, Awadhi painting represents a confluence of multiple influences such as Mughal technical mastery, Persian aesthetic refinement, local traditions, and European naturalism. This synthesis contributed to the formation of distinct regional identity. I have mentioned a few images in PPT that due to lack of time, I couldn't mention much more. So we can see the naturalism dominated by European influence, and in one image, the Lucknow-based means Nawabi influence plus regional influence and Mughal influence we can see very clearly. And third one is one portrait executed by Wazir Khan, then the famous artist of Nawabi court, how he has beautifully created this portrait with the Mughal influence that is calling Siyah Kalam technique. So we can see the just after the decline of Mughal painting traditions reached into the various corners in Indian schools, particularly in Awadh region. And there the paintings flourished under the Nawabs very beautifully, and they were great patrons of art. So finally, in conclusion, the wide spectrum of regional artistic legacy of Awadh region connected in the region and regional art centers represent a refined deliberation between history, creativity, and culture. These centers have cultivated a generation of artists capable of both honoring traditions and innovating within creative frameworks, while simultaneously inspiring audiences, scholars, and the broader public cultural life. The evolution of art in Awadh region illustrates the regional artistic vocabulary is essential to India's national artistic narrative, and sustained institutional support combined with the dedication of individual artists produced to vibrant, enduring, and contextually rooted arts ecosystem. Moving forward, strengthening international collaborations, expanding inclusivity, and deepening archival and publication initiatives will ensure that the regional art continues to play a central role in shaping the artistic idioms and identity, contributing meaningfully to the broader canvas of Indian art. That's
it's your bibliography.
I couldn't mention. Yes, I have bibliography. Just wait. I have taken this bibliographical notes from. It is the History of Fine Arts in India and the West by Aditya Mori, and the Imperial Image Painting for the Mughal Court by M.C. Beach, and Strong Painting for the Mughal Emperor, Mughal and Dakkani Painting from National Museum, and Daljit, Mughal and Dakkani paintings, M. and Archer, that is Indian painting for the British, and Mildred and W.G. Archer, Oxford University Press, Ratan Parimo and Sarkar, Historical Development of Contemporary Indian Art, published by Lalit Kala Academy, New Delhi, Ratan Parimo Sarkar, Historical Development, S. Bhatnagar, Variegated Vista, Painting, Sculpture and in Post-Independent Uttar Pradesh. Bhatnagar's Madan Lal Nagar, Samkalin Kala, Lalit Kala Academy publications in many volumes. And one is from Welcome to Lalit Kala Academy, Partha Mittar's Art and Nationalism in Colonial India, and Aspects of Mughal Painting, Expression and Impression, S.P. Verma from Mughal and Dakkani Painting. That's all.
Thank you, Abdur Rahman ji.
Thank you.
Next presenter is Shraddha Sahib.
So today I'm going to present my topic on ritualistic and utilitarian importance of the Bhil painting of Rajasthan. So I'm research scholar from Department of History and Archaeology, Central University of Haryana. So broadly I'm discussing about, firstly I'm discussing about the painting, defined as painting by several scholars like Anand Kumara Swami, who said that painting and art not as the mere imitation of nature, but as a spiritual discovery and manifestation of the inner idea. Like it is in the Chitra Sutra, it is defined as a supreme art form that mirrors the world, capturing life, emotion, and divinity through precise lines, proportions, and colors. Paintings were merely defined in two forms as visual arts and performing arts, which we can define that painting is not just imitation by the artist, while it is grown and reached to its paths far excellence with the objectivity and circumstances which the spectator believes to it. So, introducing about the Bhil paintings of Rajasthan. That Bhils were the original, called as an original inhabitants of the land, and the Bhil word is derived from the word Bhil, which means archer. They were defined in several inscriptions, like in Upper Brahma, several sources like in Upper Brahmasas, Katha Saritra Sagar, Puranas, and epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata, like the mention of Eklavya. And in Tamilakam, they were defined as Vilavar and the Minavar tribes. The Vilavars and Minavar tribes were find similarity with the Bhil tribes of Rajasthan as well. Geographically, they were found in the central western part of India, which is called as the Adharkanch region, which covers the areas of present-day Gujarat, Rajasthan, and Madhya Pradesh. And they were said to be as the pre-Aryan origin, classified as Australoid or a Vedate. So how they were they were found in the Rajasthan, like they were found primarily in the Mewar region of Rajasthan, which comprises of the area Udaipur, Baswara, Pratapgarh, and Dungarpur, while the literary presence of there were not found earlier than 626 AD, when Nagaditya, who was a Guhila ruler, founded the Nagada region. Nagada is the capital of the Mewards, were called as the primer capital of the Mewar region of the Guhila Rajputs of the Rajasthan, and they found it with the cooperation of the Bhils. Like the several rulers who were of the Mewar region were find that they made connection with the Bhil tribes, and as the Bhils were the original inhabitants of the land, so they made an important place. Like in the coronation, the forehead of the Rajput rulers was coronated by the Bhil blood. It is said by in several texts as well, and Rajputs gained supremacy, and then they found a tribe known as Bhilala, which is formed by the merger of the Bhil and Ala, who is known as the Ala as the superior than the Bhils. And social conditions is also depicted through the paintings, like the tribal inhabitants of the lands where they profoundly living in the clusters in the mountainous regions, and the Fala is an important residential place, and more than one Fala is known as Pala. So this is a social conditions where they were lives, and they were also called as Van Putras. So painting traditions in tribe, talking about the traditions of the paintings in the tribal regions, like we can say that tribe is a social group, usually with a definite area, dialect, cultural homogeneity, and a unifying social organization. And several tribes we can find in throughout the India, like the Santals, Damors, Dhokras, Bhils, Sauras, and Orans, as we well known, and etc. There are several other tribes as well. So religion, rituals, and social life is expressed through the art traditions of these tribes. The kind of circumstances or in the kind of living conditions which they were following, they were showing it through the art traditions of themselves, like the proximity of the Dhuli Chitra floor painting and Biti Chitra the wall painting, scroll painting, textile painting. Like textile painting, we can take the examples of Kantha textile, which we found in the tribals regions. So these are types of the painting traditions which the tribes were following. So, and women were also played a very important role in the tribal regions, like they make the yantras, some magical diagrams, which is a part of tantric Hindu practices like Kola, Mandana of the Rajasthan, and Aripana. When the Buddhists developing the temples, the Jainas were following the Jainas were also developing their rock architectures, and the Jainas were building their temples in the Mount Abu. The Bhils were primarily the hunters, fishermen, and the food gatherers, but they were showing, but their traditions of the paintings is gradually developing, and they were forming and they were showing their art practices through these paintings. Like they formed the examples of a tiger, which they the two type of tiger they painted, which is show which through this they show like the act of Narmada river. This is an art form which is basically formed in illustration on the removal of suffering and arrival of the good fortune. Like talking about the Bhil paintings, so Bhil decorate their houses and walls, which is we called as Mitti Chitra. Both males and females participate in decorating their houses. Like females played an important roles, and males were also showing the ritualistic importance of the painting. Illustration of removal of suffering and arrival of good fortune is the basic aim and uh, theme of the paintings of the tribals. And they used to define some kind of symbols like the sun, moon, peacock, monkey, spider. These kinds of evidences of the animals which they found in nearby regions to themselves. Like they were using it as a zonal geographical tracking coding system, which we are calling it nowadays like GPS system. So as they were the one putras who were living in the mountainous regions, so they use these types of paintings to make the marks on the roadside so that they can easily track the region. So they were developed it as a like of GPS system in the earlier times. The examples of paintings of the Bhil paintings which we found like the Bharadi, Bhairoji Mata ka Devra, Tejaji ka Sajawat, Gotrej. These are the names of the specific paintings which they given to them, like Ganpati ka Saath, Baba Ganesh, Indradev, and Pithora Deva, which is the Pithora Dev is the foremost or the famous example of the paintings of the Bhils. Like in this image, I'm showing that the first image, the Ganesh Dev painting is depicted. In the last one, the Gotrej painting is defined, and in the second one, they were describing the Pithora art in a decorative form. So tools and techniques which the Beals use, like the colors they use from the natural colors. Brushes were also from naturally acquired, like the neem twigs and the palash trees. And specifically names were given by the local peoples, like the artists were given the name of Lakhendra or Lakhara. There were one person who keep the record of Pithora graffiti, which is known as Jokhra. The one is there a storyteller who describes the stories of Pithora Deva, who is known as Malga, and the chief priest and the advisor is the Badwa, who make an important connection between the artist or between the god, which superficial god which they were thinking about, or whom the painting they were making. So I'm discussing the utilitarian and ritualistic importance of the tribal paintings. Like in the utilitarian importance, I'm describing that utilitarian perspective is presented through the females of the Bhil tribe. Like utilitarian means it has some functional purpose in the daily life, combining practical utility and aesthetic designs attached to its significance. Like in the utilitarian perspective, we were taking the nature, society, environment, geographical and human social lives needs which they can absorb. In Bhil painting, we find some illustrations of Chomli and Odhan. Like Chomli is used by the region of Rajasthani peoples, as it is like Hindidi or Gagri called in Rajasthani language, which they used to depict in a very colorful measure, like a circular type of painting they were depict, which depicts that the region is very the region is very less in water, so women have to carry water from the distant lands. So they were depicting this type of Chomli and Odhan in their painting styles. Wheels were also making Odhana art, like making of dots and tattoos on the hands or the chin or nose. So these dots they carry forwarded in the painting styles as well, and which dots signifies the heaps of grain of jawar and bajra, as the region is very proximus in the cultivation of these crops. Dots of rayan trees, amba tree, which we found in the proximity in this region, and horses are made as a symbol of the deity worship. In the painting of marriage procession, Raja Bhoj is also portrayed, who is a benevolent king towards the subject. See in this image, in the first image, Raja Bhoj is defined like on this elephant. Raja Bhoj is portrayed. So he is taken as like a well-wisher of the all the tribes, who keep the tribes in a very good wealth or health, and he looked towards his subject. And the ritualistic importance, when art plays a symbolic or spiritual function within culture, it is associated with mystical ideas and some beliefs. Like the male painters who were called as the male painters were called as the Bhopas. During the time of marriage procession, Baba Pithora and Pithori Devi, they were formed or they were depicted. And Gavri dance is also portrayed in the paintings. and the nukto rite, which is a rite which is symbolic in the time of when some person is dead, but we don't find any kind of mention, or it I also used in the later, like in the nukto rite, Godrej Parvesh, like same kind of symbols are attached with through this nukto rite as well, like cow on the metal tray or the raval, barvo, or baha played an important role similarly in the ritualistic importance. And I'm going toward the syncretism. So earlier the paintings were found on the walls and floor of the houses, but now they were also found on the paper, canvas, and the fabrics, and the artists make the images of the earlier they were all, only for following the ritualistic or the utilitarian importances, or the significant like gods they depict, rituals they depict, but nowadays they were using tractor, buses, cars, automobiles, and they use portraying the dhotis, langots, or the horses, and even depicting the trousers and bikes. So this kind of syncretic cultures is developed nowadays, and these designs are also found and preserved in the interior designs, or including the wall and the saris as well. So concluding, I'm saying that it is an agglomeration of ritualistic, utilitarian, and the individualistic importance of the Bhil tribes, which they try to show from their painting traditions, and their origin, nature, and geography, as well as the agricultural practices, habits, and rituals, were all reflected through the painting. And in further reference, I just used that in the region of Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat, the study is very richly done, while in the Rajasthan area, it is remain undeciphered. The Nukto rite, which very much significant attached to the similar symbols like the marriage processions, but we did not find any kind of paintings like this. So, and these are my bibliography which I have used in this paper. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shraddha Sahib. Nice presentation. And the next presenter will be Abhik Mukherjee.
So, good morning to everyone present here. I am Abhik Mukherjee, a first-year master's student from the Maharaja Shahjirao University of Baroda. So, firstly, I would like to begin by thanking Please India Foundation for giving me the opportunity to present my paper today. I would also like to thank our chair, Dr. Raj Kumar Mazinder, for presiding over this session today, and all the participants and attendants present with us today. So, based on the title of my paper, my research explores the Rathwa community's Pithora tradition, arguing that it is not merely folk art, but a complex sacred script with deep prehistoric and lithic roots. Before going into the Pithora tradition and their writing, I would just like to shortly introduce the Rathwas. So, they are mainly a scheduled tribe inhabiting the hilly forested tracts of Chota Udaipur district in Gujarat, which borders Madhya Pradesh. They are mainly derived from the word Radbistar, meaning inhabitants of the forested or hilly regions, and they have a distinct dialect known as Rathwi. Their social organization is usually structured around kinship, clan exogamy, and dispersed homesteads. And community life is governed by village councils and ritual specialists. And the economy is mainly based on subsistence and agricultural practices. And they also have weekly haats known as markets, which serve as vital commercial and social hubs for resource exchange and collective interaction. And their religious beliefs and ritual framework are deeply rooted in ancestor worship, nature powers, and village deities, which shows a layered interaction between indigenous traditions and Hindu influences. And the central deity that we have also seen in the previous presentation is Baba Pithora, who is a primary protective deity linked to myths of sacred birth and abandonment. Now, going to Pithora practice and the importance of Pithora Baba itself, I like to define Pithora at first. So, it is defined by practitioners as a sacred script or painted ethnography rather than just mere decorative folk art. It is a total communication system bridging prehistoric roots with modern tribal identity, documenting history, daily life, and spiritual aspirations. And as I've already mentioned, it is centered on Baba Pithora, the supreme deity, creator of the universe, god of grains, and the protector of the household. There's also mythological genesis that we could also see. And we could also see that the Pithora also has a lot of mythological, ritualistic, and functional roots. So there's a divine lineage. Baba Pithora was born to Rani Kali Koil, who was the sister of the king of gods known as Baba Ind. And out of wedlock, Rani Kali Koil and Kandu Raja bore Pithora Baba. And to avoid social wrath, Kali Koil set the infant afloat on a lotus leaf. But he was later rescued and raised by his aunt Rani Kajal, who fed him flower juices and akro tea milk. And upon maturity, Pithora Baba identified his biological father in a celestial assembly, and claiming his rightful domain and kingship, he became the king. And there's the sacred marriage, which is the central theme of the Pithora writing, which is the union of Pithora Rani and Pithora. Pithora Rani is the daughter of the first farmers known as Abo Kumbi and Mathari. And the depiction in the Pithora is usually the wedding, which is the central motif of the mural. and which is portrayed as a grand royal procession. And the symbolism usually represents the essential union of divine protection and agricultural productivity, ensuring the community survival. So the study area for my project was mainly dependent on the systemic documentation of the Pithora tradition within the Rathwa community of Chota Udaipur. It involved qualitative data collection using structured, semi-structured interviews and questionnaires, and also cross-sectional insights gathered from practitioners, ritual specialists, and the general community. And it involved all the village locations that you can see on the screen. There are more than 10 plus villages that I have visited and where I've conducted interviews to get various informations about the Pithora tradition and the personal aspects of the Pithora tradition. So this is an illustration of a Pithora Baba, who's the central deity in Pithora, and you can find like similar motifs, but the centrality of the motif is maintained within the Pithora itself. Now, to understand how Pithora is not a mere painting and a functional and a spiritual system, I'll explain the process of a Pithora writing. So, from a Gardhani's perspective, a Gardhani is usually the homeowner who initiates a Pithora. According to a Gardhani, and for a Gardhani, a Pithora is not a living covenant. It is not a decorative artifact, but a physical manifestation of Baba Pithora, who transforms the home into a sacred site. And why is a Pithora conducted? It is initiated as a mannat or a vow during survival crisis like recurring illnesses, sudden death of cattle, crop failure, or to ensure a child's survival. It is a contract, a spiritual contract, a conditional promise to write the Pithora once the specific hardship is removed. There are various phases that is involved within a Gardhani and within a Gardhani's house. There are pre-Pithora preparations like the Paudi and Badwa. The Gardhani presents arat, which is black gram, in khakra leaves to the Badwa, who is a priest, for a grain reading diagnosis. There's also financial commitment. There is a monumental economic undertaking costing several lakhs in the current times. It involves hosting 8 to 10 lakharas, the Badwa, and a communal feast. And one might be wondering where the Pithora is usually conducted or where the Pithora is usually written. It is known as the Raj Bit or the Royal Wall. It is a designated 11 by 8 feet seat for the deity, typically in the porch of the house. There's also 7-day Lipna, where unmarried women known as Panduda Lahu purify walls with cow dung and mud for 7 days. And there's the 8th day, which is known as Pandu Dholavanu, where people go to the hills to get white clay, which is usually gathered from the nearby mountains and applied as the throne for the painting. Then there's the phase 2, which is the divine invitation and materials. The divine invitation is usually known as the Notra, where turmeric rice is sent to temples, relatives, and akharas to invite the gods and the people to witness the Pithora. Ritual mediums like bamboo brushes, natural pigments, and mahuda, which is alcohol from mahuwa trees, mixed with cow's milk as a paint solvent and provided to the lakharas. Then there's the phase 3, which is the writing. The first stroke is always applied by the Gardhani to the Baba Gane, who is the first motif on the Pithora writing. Then there's the 3 realms written on the Rajbit or the wall. There's the celestial realm, which consists of the sun and the moon as universal guardians. Then there's the middle realm, which usually is the central theme of the Pithora, which is the grand wedding procession of Pithora. And then there's the earthly realm, which involves the Raja Bhoj, who is a patron of agriculture and livestock, on a blue or black elephant. Phase 4 is the ritual culmination, which usually involves secondary rituals like the Akhada, the place where additional rituals are conducted and ritual cooking is done. Then there's the Kadam tree ceremony, where branches are ritually cut and sown in the veranda. Then there's inspection by the Badwa in a state of trance, who inspects the mural with a sword. He gives life to the figures once satisfied. Then there's the final sacrifice, which is usually where a goat and a chicken is sacrificed. There's vada and generous alcohol libations too. And the phase 5 is a lifelong stewardship between the Gardhani and the Pithora itself. He becomes the steward of the resident deity. He seeks blessings for harvest, marriages, offering food during Holi Diwali before the family leaves to the Pithora. And there's smaller reconsecrations every 3 to 5 years to maintain the deity's protective presence. To know more about the Lakhara, I'm very thankful to Dr. Paresh Rathwa, Padma Shri Awardee. I got the chance to interview him and he told me everything there is about a Lakhara. So basically, the identity and persona of a Lakhara is he's a ritual scribe whose role transcends artistry to act as an intercessor between human and spiritual realms. Mastery is achieved through an itinerant apprenticeship model rather than formal schooling. A student may start at 17, but only reaches independent status around 25. Pithora writing is viewed as a spiritual gift for a Lakhara inherent to the Rathwa community. It is a service to the gods and not a profession for outsiders. There's also a lot of processes involved for a Lakhara itself. Walls are plastered with Pandu, as I already mentioned first, for a Gardhani too. They are mixed with river water by unmarried girls, Kumaris, and a sacred page is created. There's a purification process of the Lakhara itself. The Lakharas undergo a ritual bath in river water and milk and wear new unblemished clothes before painting to shed the mundane. And natural pigments like haldi, indigo, sindoor are mixed with cow's milk and mahua. And on modern cement walls, like natural pigments cannot be applied right now because they don't support natural pigments. So acrylics are used. But a symbolic drop of traditional pigment is also applied to maintain ancestral continuity. So all the lakharas follow various syntax. As I mentioned earlier, that Baba Pithora is always the central deity and the central motif in a Pithora. Just like that, they follow a center outward progression mirroring Ratha creation myths. It has a sacred enclosure which begins with a heme, which is a triangular border, and a janpo, which is a celestial entrance. There's also vow hierarchy. There are various vows which are usually made within a span of 10 years. So the first vow usually involves the five horses or the main functional deities and celestial markers within a Pithora. The second vow usually involves nine horses, which is an entourage of deities and environmental elements, usually known as the Shrushti. And the third vow, which involves 18 horses, is the whole Pithora itself. It depicts the entire creation. So when upgrading a vow, old paintings are ritually scraped and residues mixed into the new pigment, ensuring the past is integrated into the present. There's also Badwa and Lakhara relationship. The Badwa chants myths to give life to the figures as they are written, while the Lakhara intentionally omits a detail. The Badwa must identify to prove spiritual insight before final consecration. And according to the Lakhara too, that he also agrees to a clear rock art lineage. Lakharas connect the practice directly to the rock art sites. In indigenous theory, the Pithora is a refinement of rock art, moving from cave walls to domestic dwellings as human mental and structural capacities evolved. So unlike general folk art, Pithora is guarded as a sacred proprietary ritual writing with its own specialized chemistry. So this is Paresh Rathwar making rock art on a canvas, and this is the Heme and Janpo. Badwa is the spiritual priest, but not everybody could be a Badwa. He receives dual education. Training is half transparent in dreams by deities and half terrestrial, where practical ritual sequences learned by apprenticeship. He's the first responder for human and livestock illness. He uses a kisoda beetle leaf and urad dal as conduits to draw out the essence of afflictions. And he interrogates Pithora Baba to determine if the cause is natural ancestral displeasure or a breach of spiritual contract. Basically, he's the first to be called if there's an illness in a house, illness with cattle, or there's failure in agricultural crops. So he also manages long-term vows spanning 5 to 10 years. He ensures the family is financially stable. Then only he goes ahead with the Pithora ritual. He also directs the installation of the royal wall at the threshold of the house. He also enters into the trance where he plays the drum along with his singers to induce Pavan, which is a state of trance itself. In the state of trance, Pithora Deva is believed to enter the Badwa's body, and he judges if the offerings were sufficient. He uses a sword to point out flaws for the Lakharas to correct. He also acts as a lawyer negotiating with the deity for forgiveness as a family's poverty prevented a perfect offering. He also agrees that there's a continuity from the rock art to the Pithora writing that we see today. And he also says that the rock art that the people earlier made were the ancestors, were his own ancestors or the Badwas themselves. So since we are short on time and I don't have time to show all the motifs separately, I just did a small semiotic analysis of the deities of the nature and modernity. So there's the central pantheon, which is the Baba Gane, Baba In, Baba Pithora, Pithora Rani, Rani Kajal, Bar Matha no Dhani, Raja Bhoj, Lakhari and Jokhari. There's also nature and ancestral motifs like the ancestral horses, which you can see at the very right of the central wall. They are known as Khatrij Dev. They represent the community's ancestors. Then there are the celestial guardians known as Hurya Dev, the sun, and Handaryo Dev, the moon. There's also sacred flora known as the Kadam tree, Tud and Khajuri trees. There's also faunal and human symbols like the horses known as Saval Dharmi Ghoda and Hudod Deva. There are animals, lion and tigers, who act as celestial gate protectors, holy animals like buffaloes and cows, and goats for sacrifice. There's also scenes of daily life like buttermilk churning, hunters, postmen, and the chowkidar, who is a guardian of the Pithora, who is a modern guardian of the Pithora. There's also special figures like Nakti Bhutin and Kamdev, and you might also see symbols of modernity like trucks, planes, clocks, and hand pumps. And ritual boundaries are also added at the very end and placed outside the central theme, ensuring relevance without altering the ancient Vidhi Vidhan or the ritual procedure. So this is a basic or the neo Pithora that you can find in today's time. This you can find the ancestral horses on the very right. You can find that the Pithora is divided into three sections. The upper section is mainly the celestial figures. The middle section is mainly the marriage procession involving the five main deities, and the below usually involving the animals. So for this very study, I've also documented several parallels within the Pithora and the rock art itself. I visited various sites like Chitra Dungri, Baba Venu Hills, Ghora Lekan, and Manva Sil. They were all situated in the rugged terrain of Vindhya and Satpura ranges. And basically, I'll just go quickly with this. So very interestingly, I could document certain rock paintings that could be a direct parallel to the Pithora itself. I could find equine centrality where I could find horses with riders, which very similarly look like the Pithora and Pithora Baba. And I could also see many martial paintings on the rock caves itself, which could also correlate to the Chaukidar motif that we see on the Pithora. There's also hum bulls. We can see that could be linked to the farming creators Abu Kunbi and Mathari, who are also divine figures within the Pithora itself. You can see in this image, I have maintained a parallel between the hum bulls and the hum bulls in the Pithora. There's also hum bulls in the natural landscape of the people of Chota Udaipur. Then there's also continuity between the ritual materiality, because there's a terracotta horse, which is also it's just the principal offering that is provided to the Pithora. And I could also draw correlations with that and the Pithora Dev we could find in the Pithora traditions. There's a specialized craft that is practiced by the people in a Kumbhadwada, which is what you can see in the presentation itself. There's also martial and subsistence tools like swords and bows and arrows that could be used, that were also found in the rock paintings, and that could also be found as offerings to the Pithora and Pithora writings that we can see on the walls. And we can also see a transition of sacred space, like rituals move from otherworldly cave ceilings to the domestic interior. So to conclude, the paper is meant to portray that Pithora is not to be seen as a painting, but it is to be seen as a sacred script or ritual writing. It means a lot functionally and spiritually, individually, and for the community of the people of Chota Udaipur too. So I would also like to remove the misconceptions of the common folk that Pithora is just a mere painting. And it also has a very rich archaeological etymology. And I would also like to thank all the teachers and the people of Chota Udaipur have helped me in this project. And so these are the references that I've used for the overall project and the overall paper. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abhik Mukherjee, for your detailed and nice presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So, Hitangi Brahmbhatt, please present your paper.
Namaste. First of all, I would like to thank Pleach Foundation for this opportunity. I'm also very happy to see a representation from MSU, including the chair of this panel, Professor Mazinder, along with Dr. Rajesh Singh and Abhik, whose wonderful presentation we saw, and also a friend and former colleague who is over here. I trace back, like MSU is my alma mater, so I'm very happy to see the representation here.
Thank you.
And I would like to, today talk to all of you about Rajput paintings and how can we start a conversation about Rajput paintings and Indian paintings without mentioning Anand Kumar Swamy, who was actually the one who coined the term Rajput paintings. The paper, therefore, begins with a close examination of Kumar Swamy's scholarship. If we could go to the next slide, please. Towards an understanding of Indian paintings, which succeeded the pivotal exhibitions of 1931 and 47-48 in London and India. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So, Kumar Swamy's publications and the art exhibitions were instrumental in setting the stage for a nationalistic discourse, which I'm trying to show through this presentation, which distinguished the indigenous and traditional Rajput paintings from the foreign Mughal ones. Now, since then, as the paper will demonstrate, most art historians have responded by considering Mughal and Rajput paintings as binaries, often accounting for the emergence and development of Rajput paintings from Mughals. And in this process, invariably, Rajput paintings have been looked at in comparison to Mughal standards, instead of being examined by their own standards. So what I'm trying to attempt over here today is to associate myself with Kumar Swamy's scholarship and unfold the distinctive Rajput character through a pictorial analysis of a few paintings from the Rajasthani courts, while also talking about the developments at the Mughal court in order to provide a different perspective, perhaps, for comprehending Rajput paintings. We can go to the next slide, please. So, taking into consideration Kumar Swamy's 4 major publications dated 1912, 1916, 1918, 1926, there are certain aspects which were reinforced and certain ideas that he modified later. But among these, what we see, which keeps recurring, is his emphatic distinction of Rajput painting from Mughal. Now, it is important here that Kumar Swamy said that the Hindu painters were the ones who painted Rajput paintings, and the patronage was received by was given by Rajput princes. So it's important to note the distinction he marks here. He also traces the lineage of Rajput painting to the long-standing tradition of Ajanta painting, which also culminated into the Jain manuscripts on palm leaves. Since Kumar Swamy coined this term, we can go to the next slide. Rajput painting, a lot of scholars have aligned with his scholarship. Like, for instance, N.C. Mehta aligns with Kumar Swamy on this and prefers to use the term Hindu rather than Rajput. But there were others who opposed this, Khandalawala being one of the most prominent opponents of Kumar Swamy's scholarship. And that has been continued so far. We can go to the next slide with Milo Beach and Milo Beach and B.N. Goswami giving a rather structured, outlook of the development of both Mughal and Rajput paintings. Yet in recent times, scholars like Kavita Singh and Molly Emma Aitken in, say, 2010 and 2013, which you can see in the next slide, have continued to measure Rajput paintings by Mughal standards. Now, it is important to put all these things in a particular context. So, for that, the 1931 exhibition, we can go to the next slide, at the Burlington Fine Arts Club in London was a landmark exhibition. Now, Brinda Kumar has written about this exhibition, and she considers this as the nationalist Indian art historians' attempt to delineate two main categories of fine arts, paintings and sculpture, and distinguish them from decorative and industrial arts, which was one of its first attempts. And this was to demonstrate parity with and intelligibility within the categories of Western art and in Western institutions. Devika Singh talks about the next exhibition that took place in 47-48 at the Royal Academy of Arts in London, and she informs us again about the emergence of nationalist Indian art history with regard to the history of Mughal art. So at the beginning of the 20th century, there was no place for Mughal art it was only contained in the category of Islamic art, and it was not yet reclaimed by Indian nationalist art historians. At the same time, ironically, Persian art was incorporated at the Royal Academy exhibition in 1926, where Mughal art again, as I said, did not find any place. Yet there were representations of Mughal India in China in one of the rooms because they were considered as areas that were influenced by Persian art. And then in 1948, in our very own country, in Delhi, V.S. Agrawal wrote the catalogue for the exhibition of Indian art, where again he traces, he has the same viewpoint as Kumar Swamy, cites Kumar Swamy and traces the development of Indian paintings to Ajanta. And he also considers, painting to have attained the the status of national art. We can go to the next slide. So what has happened is that, invariably art historians have tried to draw out two major distinctions between Mughal and Rajput painting on the basis of genre, that is through portraiture, and on the basis of subject matter. Now, Kumar Swamy previously addressed this by stating how portraiture was attempted in Rajput paintings, but it was only in a small part, and the characterization through portraiture was more heroic and epic rather than the meticulous representation that one sees in Mughal paintings. Of course, he was alluding to naturalism, which must be read as present-day realism, in comparison to the idealized versions that Rajput court painters produced. And still people like Molly Emma Aitken in 2010 emphatically stated her use of naturalization or naturalism to refer to Mughal paintings in contrast to denaturalization, which was intrinsically Rajput. So let's take a look at, an example of, next slide please, from Mughal art, which is, a painting patronized by Jahangir. Now, this is, as you can see, it's portraiture. The painting demonstrates Jahangir meeting Shah Abbas I, but this is based on a dream, wherein in reality Jahangir had never met Shah Abbas. And he asked his, this is painted by Abul Hassan, so he asked his court painter to paint this painting. Now, what you see over here is not plain portraiture, but it is actually, even though it has a resemblance to Jahangir, a striking one that we can also see on the coins, the resemblance is familiar. But it's not plain portraiture. It is rather allegorical over here, heavily laden with political significance, because we see the symbolic representations of the sun and the moon, the crescent moon below, which is celestial in context. It has a celestial significance. We also see the cherubs down, with the wings. And these cherubs signify the dream from the angels rather than the dream from the Satan. So it has a religious context here. And the lion and the lamb that we see, on which, both of them are standing, they also signify the political strength and weakness. All of them are atop the globe. So again, the proclamation of Jahangir as the ruler of the universe. Now, if we consider this as portraiture, then, well, nothing of this kind was produced at Rajput courts. We can go to the next slide, please. However, Kumar Swami at the outset declared Rajput paintings to have religious subject matter in comparison to the secular subject matter of Mughal paintings, to which art historians succeeding him have agreed to quite an extent. However, Vishakha Desai in her catalogue in 1985, so Vishakha Desai is of the opinion that if we look at court paintings from both Mughal and Rajput courts without them stemming from literary sources, they almost seem indistinguishable. We can go to the next slide. So I propose that Kumar Swami had already identified literary sources as an integral source of inspiration for Rajput paintings. And I propose that Shringar as an element that distinguished Rajput paintings and gave it the character that it did. Let's look at, 3 painted folios from a text called Rasik Priya, written by Keshav Das, a court poet of Orcha in 1591. Now, these 3 paintings are from Mewar court and produced at different time periods. So this one is 1630 to 40. The other 2 that we see, can we go to the next slide, please? They are from 1660 to 70 and 720 to 40. Now, this is, it shows the state of a Naika in separation from her beloved. And we see the moon, the jasmine flowers, that there are these ladies making the sandalwood and camphor paste. All the cooling agents actually are giving her burn because she is in separation from, they have the opposite effect because she's in separation from her beloved. We can go to the next slide. However, what I think is that there is a slight shift in this 3rd painting where the painter delineates an empty chamber that we see on the side. Now, this slight shift, in my opinion, makes all the difference because the empty chamber alludes to the absent Nayak, who is being spoken about through the verse and whose absence has been amplified. So my contention is that it's Shringar, with all the suggestiveness and the literariness, that has made it quite open-ended for the painter to heighten the mood through his intelligence and skills. And this is abundantly possible in Rajput paintings due to the sheer nature of the literary text, but it wasn't possible in Mughal school. So we can come to the deductions. The next slide, please. Now, much has been written about Rajput paintings by art historians thus far, but most of it has been reductive, accounting for what Rajput painting is not according to them: naturalistic, adaptive, and secular. It is unfair to label Rajput paintings as simply religious, heretic, conservative, because they were much beyond these watertight categories. Rajput painting was an art of the courts, which does not simply mean that representations of nobility through portraiture and documentation of historical and political events, but it brings to light the most essential aspect of court art: patronage and connoisseurship. The Rajput rulers must first be considered connoisseurs of art to have appreciated and been interested in patronizing paintings inspired by literature. Moreover, it's the preference of the patron that dictates the functioning of the art atelier at the court. The Mughal atelier worked on a completely different principle altogether, which aligned with its governing politics of divine kingship. So the Mughal emperor viewed themselves as messianic bearers of a new era, asserting their sovereignty universally. The Mughal court painters in the process were diminished to slaves of the court of the emperor, which is often evidenced through their signatures in the paintings, losing their agency completely. The Rajput courts, on the other hand, were neither interested in asserting their political might, nor were they able to do so since they were forced to serve the Mughal overlords. The painting ateliers did not work on the model of divine kingship, but rather reflected the fine, refined tastes of the patron. So Rajput rulers, their might lied in their roles as connoisseurs who understood and appreciated and patronized paintings for centuries, stemming from the rich and nuanced literature often overlaid with shringa. And this, I believe, gave ample opportunities to the painter to demonstrate his skills and exhibit his agency, which has subsequently resulted in the production of the finest and most expressive paintings at these courts. We can go to the last slide. Thank you. It has all the details about the image courtesy.
Thank you, Hitangi Brahmbhatt. Nice presentation. Next presenter will be Tanushree Midha.
So firstly, good morning, everyone. Good morning, sir. And thank you to Preach Foundation for making me present. I'm very happy to be here. The topic of my presentation is patrons, champions, and pictorial therapy, facing the evolution of the Mandi school of paintings. My name is Tanushree Midha, and I'm an independent researcher. So let's start. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So firstly, just a bit about Mandi. So what is Mandi? Mandi is a district that is today in Himachal Pradesh. The time period for its artistic traditions goes from around the mid-17th century to the 19th century. Its patronage comes from the Sen dynasty, which were descendants of the Sena dynasty of the Bengal and Assam area. Some of the main features and themes of this artistic tradition are striking features, dark and light hues of colors like blue, red, green, black, assertive outline, and themes that focus on Shakta culture and Tantric influences, which is what made Mandi so individualistic in the broader school of Pahari painting that it comes from. The central idea of this presentation is that the evolution of the painting tradition of Mandi shows patronage patterns, ancestral aesthetics, and the socio-cultural context of the time that they were made in. So I'll be looking at three paintings coming from three different centuries and then going through the evolution through that. So if we could just go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the first phase of paintings that come from Mandi. And this is one of the earliest artworks that I could find, which belongs to the mid-17th century CE. This artwork is called the goddess Kali with Hanuman, a lioness, in the pendulum. It's attributed to the early master of the court of Mandi. Since we do not have any actual names, we give them labels. Therefore, this is the label given to this artist. Now, here we see a very unlikely pairing of characters, that is Kali and Hanuman. Now, this pairing is usually very rare. However, we do find this pairing in the folk literature of Eastern India, and particularly in the episodes of the Ramayana, such as the Mahiragana Bagha. Now, this is and also in the Assamese version of the Ramayana. Now, Mahiragana is the lord of Patal who sides with Ravan during the Ramayana, and he kidnaps Ram and Lakshman only to be defeated by Hanuman with the help of Kali. Therefore, this pairing therefore makes sense if we look at it in that context. I've also mentioned that there are influences that come from Mughal elements of art, and since this is a sketch, we focus on characters and iconography in this sense. The iconography of Hanuman in this image is very vague, and some scholarship also actually confuses it with Jamban, who is the bear king. However, this along with the presence of animals in this sketch, so the presence of animals in this sketch could suggest that the artist may have belonged to the Mughal school or the Mughal atelier, particularly Jahangir's atelier, and must have migrated after the death of Jahangir when the civil war started in the Mughal times to the neighboring kingdoms of the Pahari and Rajput artistic traditions. And this is hypothesized due to the presence of anatomically perfect animals, and which was a major feature of the Mughal art under Jahangir, and the seeming confusion of iconography that is seen with Hanuman and Jamban. Going on to the second phase of paintings, and the next slide, please. Thank you. So this painting is called Raja Sin's version of Savari Durga. This belongs to the 18th century, and it is attributed to another artist who has been labeled as a Mandi master. Here we see a very heavy influence of patronage, particularly coming from the king who is in the painting as well, whose name is Raja Sid Sen. And the Raja was described as a very erratic personality. He was considered to be a tantric practitioner and was also a devout worshipper of the Devi and Shiva. And under him, we see a lot of images of Devi being produced, especially in their tantric versions, such as the Dasha Mahavidyas. However, if you see the depiction of Durga, especially in this case, the Savari Durga, it's very interesting here. So, this painting is currently housed at the Met Museum, and their caption mentions her as a local goddess who belonged to the Savara tribe, who used to be in the northern Indian hills. However, if I checked and I couldn't find any such tribe and or any nomadic tribes that belong to the Himalayan foothills with that name. But there seems to be such a tribe that exists in the eastern part of India, which is called the Saura tribe or the Savara tribe. And it actually also has a lot of ancient links, and it has been mentioned in the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And if one compares the depiction of the goddess as she has been shown here with women from the Saura tribe, the resemblance is really uncanny with the heavy jewelry, the peacock feather morchals, the ghungroos being shown. And these all suggest that not only was Radha Sitsen commissioning art that was tantric in nature, but also that took anthropological inspiration from Eastern India. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Thank you. Now, this is what I call as the third phase or the last phase that belongs to the early 19th century CE. And here we have a painting of the Devi as Lalita Maha Tripura Sundari. This style has been attributed as the style of Sajnu. And if you have heard the name of Sajnu, you would have probably heard it in the context of Kangra atelier. However, this is a time period where the Kangra atelier disintegrated due to Sansar Chand's kingdom of Kangra disintegrating. So we see a lot of migration of artists coming from Kangra to other Pahari and Rajput schools, and Sajnu was one of them who came to the Mandi school. And the paintings of this period that come from Mandi therefore take a lot of aesthetic inspiration from the Kangra and Mughal artistic traditions, which is seen in the anatomical position of the figures, the architectural elements that you can see in this painting, as well as the detailing, the borders, which have not been seen in the Mandi paintings that we see earlier. And all this suggests that by this time, the artists had become impactful enough, strong enough that they were influencing the art of Mandi, although they were not from Mandi. Could we go on to the next slide, please? Thank you. So, just to conclude, these are some points that came up when I was studying this topic. So, firstly, when we look and understand art, so to conclude, when looking to understand the evolution of the painting tradition of Mandi, it shows that the culture that it was made in, and it becomes evident that the paintings cannot be looked at as just aesthetic objects for viewing pleasure, but rather as a cultural repository of the locale that they were produced in. It becomes important to understand paintings not in their individual or isolated existence, but as visual archives of the patronage patterns, the religious beliefs, the local practices, and political, social events of the time that they were produced in. And in the case of Mandi specifically, the hypothesized harking back to take inspiration from Eastern Indian aesthetics, literature, and anthropology also suggests that these paintings serve as a way to pay tribute to ancestry and lineages, as seen with the kings of the Sen dynasty and the paying tribute to their ancestors who were the Senas of Bengal. And lastly, it shows how art also shifts in function as evolution takes place from building foundation with some external influences, but then establishing its own identity with its patronage patterns, as seen with Raja Sen, and then finally being heavily influenced by major traditions because the tradition itself was declining, all due to the social, political, and cultural events that that were happening in the time. And with that, I end my presentation. If we could go to the next slide, I have my references and bibliography over there, and the references for the images are on the next slide as well.
Thank you, Tanushree Midha, for your presentation. Very nice.
Sir, we have a couple of questions, mainly Abhik Mukherjee. There is a question from Alka Singh asking, how are the rock art sites being preserved and what role do the Lakhras play in this?
Okay. Ms. Alka, thank you so much for the question. So, unfortunately, none of the rock art sites that I have documented are preserved in the modern sense or preserved in the preserved sense. And unfortunately, the Mandva Sill site, which is one of the rock art sites that I documented, was heavily like heavily filled with modern graffiti, like by the villagers itself. So the actual rock art documentation was very difficult there. And as for the Lakharas, they play a very minor role in the current demographic. They still consider the rock art to be the direct lineage of Pithora, and they still have a basic importance for the rock art that is there in the hills. But currently, they don't have any direct role with the rock art. They are just the writers of the Pithora in the present sense that we are talking about.
We have another question which is very similar. So,
Okay.
how relevant are the rock art sites to the lives of Lakharas in the present time, and do they still consider them sacred or visit them from time to time?
Okay, so I'll answer the second question first. They still consider them important. They still consider them sacred. They don't visit them from time to time because they're very up in the hills and some are very inaccessible. So they would know only about 1 or 3 rock art sites to the max. But they are currently, as I also answered to Ms. Alka, they are not relevant in the very greater sense directly to the Lakharas. The rock art is not that relevant to them. It is just that they lineate like they draw direct lineage from the rock art to the Pithora itself. That is all.
Thank you, Abhik. There is another question. How much time on fieldwork and how many times visited? And sir is appreciating you, Rajesh Kumar Singh, sir, for your fieldwork and that data collection. And he is asking how much time you have been to the field and your visits.
So actually, sir, I had to go 3 times. I had to space out my days because I also have to manage all my study work and my unit tests for my masters. But I had to visit Chota Udaipur 3 times, and it almost took me the whole day. Like I went at 9 a.m. and I was there in the field till 7 p.m. and I came back. So it is like a whole day field work, and I had to consistently go to like village to village to conduct questionnaires and the interviews with the villagers, with the Lakharas and the Badwas. And also I had to go to the different rock art sites which are like not that close to each other, like which the Kikawada rock art sites were in a 5-kilometer radius, but there were other sites which were like 40 kilometers away, 50 kilometers away. So like, yeah, it involved a lot of field work and like it almost took the whole day. Thank you so much for the appreciation, sir.
Thank you, Abhik. Thank you.
First of all, a very nice presentation of 6 presenters, and I also get some artist name in their presentation as Molaram and Paresh Athwa. It's very interesting, and their works, and also congratulations to the researchers, and they all studied all these artists. Actually, we need this kind of information from this kind of webinar or session. So, and also one word mentioned by Shraddha Sahib, Dhuli Chitra. It's also very interesting. It's about discussing about floor painting. So this kind of word actually a kind of research work can be done on this topic. One word actually. So congratulations to all presenters for this nice presentation. And also I saw one book actually also. This is on Hasti Vidyanabha. It's on elephant, on book on elephant, and on account of elephant and elephant diseases. It's a 17th century manuscript which is done by one artist from Mughal court, and he came to Assam, and his name is Dilbar, and Assamese artist Dosai. Both these artists illustrate the manuscript. Assam has a rich tradition of manuscript painting, and Assamese artists use sachi bark, actually, agar from agar tree, the bark of the tree used in the artists. So, and the color from Rajasthan, they brought color from Rajasthan, Hengul Haital, red and yellow. So, so we are all connected from medieval times to all from northeast to Rajasthan or Rajasthan to northeast. We are all connected through material and through images also. So I like to thank you, Please India Foundation, for organizing such type of seminar on this kind of regional context or the regional art of our art and culture India. Thank you.